Aslam, Ned Kelly, hanged in Melbourne 1880 when he was 26. Edward Ned Kelly had already become a legend, a man whose gang had carried out 2 daring bank robberies before being cut to pieces during a siege in rural country Victoria. His story has since struck a deep chord with Australians, always ready to identify with the ordinary man standing up against persecution by officialdom. Born of an Irish convict father, 1854, Kelly's first serious brush with the law came in 1870 when he served 6 months hard labour for brawling with a neighbour and then mailing a pair of calf testicles to a man's wife. Fresh out of jail, Kelly rode his friend Isaiah Wright's horse into Greta Town, only to discover that the horse had been stolen. After a scuffle with the police constable Hall, Kelly was arrested for the theft of the horse and sentenced to 3 years in Melbourne's Pendridge prison. Wright, the actual thief, received just 18 months. Following his release during mid-1870s, Kelly, as he would later claim in his famous letters, took to stealing horses and cattle with his stepfather George King in response to the way rich landowners would impound their poorer neighbours' stock. Police also suspected his younger brother Jim and Dan Kelly to be involved in the pair's criminal activities, and on 15 April 1878, Police Constable Alexander Fitzpatrick was assaulted by members of the Kelly family at their home while trying to arrest Dan. Fitzpatrick claimed that Kelly's mother, Ellen, hit him over the head with a shovel and Ned shot him in the wrist. For their part, the Kellys said that Ned wasn't even there, that Fitzpatrick had no arrest warrant, and that the assault only occurred after Fitzpatrick threatened to shoot Ellen unless Dan went with him. The next day, Ellen Kelly, Ned's brother-in-law Bill Skilling, and his friend Bricky Williamson were arrested and later jailed for the attempted murder of Fitzpatrick. With a reward of £100 offered for their arrest, Dan and Ned went into hiding in Victoria's Wombat Ranges with accomplices Joe Byrne and Steve Hart. During 25th October, Sergeant Kennedy, along with Constables McIntyre, Lonigan and Scanlon, set off into the hills to track down their fugitives, but the Kelly gang ambushed them near some log cabins at Stringy Bark Creek, Kelly shooting Lonigan and Birney killing Scanlon. Kennedy was also killed in the exchange, but McIntyre escaped on horseback. Ned Kelly later defended his actions, writing, "I could not help shooting them, or else lie down and let them shoot me, which they would have done." Incensed, the Victorian government placed a £2,000 bounty on the heads of the gang of outlaws, but the Kellys remained unbowed. On 10 December 1878, the gang descended on the small town of Euroya, locked half the population in the train station, and robbed the National Bank of £2,260. Ned left behind the Aurora letter, written in red ink, explaining his side of the events at Stringy Bark Creek and promising dire consequences unless the government recognized the plight of poor landowners. The gang struck again on 8 February the next year in an even more audacious escapade in which they locked 2 policemen in the cells at Jerry Derry, stole their uniforms, and then robbed the Gerald Derry Bank of another £2,000. This time Ned left behind the Gerald Derry letter, but, like the first, its contents were suppressed by the authorities. The Kellys laid low over the next year until Joe Byrne discovered that his longtime friend Aaron Sherritt had turned police informer and shot him dead. The gang then decided to ambush a train carrying in police reinforcements, and so they rode to Glenrowan station on 27 June 1880. Here they pulled up the train tracks and took 40 hostages at the Glenrowan Hotel, standing them drinks on the house. But during the evening, Kelly released schoolteacher Thomas Curnow, who managed to warn the train before it ran off the rails. Around 3 a.m., some 60 police laid siege to the inn and riddled the building in a murderous crossfire, killing Birney and several hostages. In the dawn, Ned emerged, dressed in a suit of armour forged from old plough blades. He was gunned down but captured alive. The police finally let the hostages leave the hotel and set it on fire. Dan and Hart's charred corpses were later found inside. Witnesses reported that they had committed suicide earlier in the siege. Despite a petition signed by 32,000 people, Ned Kelly went to the gallows on 11 November 1880 for the murder of Constable Lonigan, having told the trial judge that he'd soon see him in hell. The last words of this unrepentant rebel were, "Such is life." Being Planet Cop, and there are many other police officers, to add a kind note, there are many other police officers on the world, police women on the world, who would think about this. Let the hostages leave the hotel and set it on fire. Dan and Hart's charred corpses were later found inside. They would, and I would obviously doubt that these two are the two that they were looking for, but that's a different issue. Next, we are moving on to the next chapter called Heists and Robberies.